China's war plans against Taiwan are entering a deadly new phase. For decades, Beijing barked threats. Now it's sharpening its knives. Massive war drills, red line violations, propaganda that labels Taiwan's president a parasite. This isn't saber-rattling anymore, it's rehearsal for invasion. At the center of this storm is President William Lai Ching-te, a man Beijing calls a separatist, an instigator of war, and the destroyer of cross-straits peace. But Taiwan isn't backing down. Under Lai, it's doing the opposite, digging in, defiant, and preparing to fight. The fuse is lit. China's military is stronger than ever. Taiwan is more resolved than ever. And the United States caught in the middle. So how did we get here? And what's China planning next? It all starts with Taiwan's new president, William Lai Ching-te. Elected in 2024, Lai turned himself into a major thorn in China's collective side. In truth, he always was one. Even before he became president, Lai was vilified in the Chinese press, with Xi's mouthpieces often referring to him as a separatist and an instigator of war, according to a May 15th article published by Foreign Affairs. We got hints of his attitude back in August 2023, mere months before Lai claimed the Taiwanese presidency. Then, the vice president of Taiwan, Lai conducted a brief visit to the United States. China reacted as though this low-key visit was a shot against its entire One China policy. It's here where we first heard the separatist branding, with China also calling Lai a troublemaker through and through. China's threats also started to grow louder in the wake of this visit. It made grand claims about how it would do everything it could to protect its sovereignty, acting as though Taiwan already belonged to it, and Lai's US visit was akin to the troublemaker child trying to extract itself from its family. The Chinese Foreign Ministry outlined Xi's position on the whole affair. Lai stubbornly adheres to the separatist position of Taiwan independence and is a troublemaker through and through, claimed the ministry. The ministry also called Taiwan the core of China's core interests, adding that China is closely following developments and will take resolute and vigorous measures to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Translation: China was scared of Lai. It feared what his election could mean for the future of a territory that it claims as its own, and that fear has only ramped up since Lai became Taiwan's president. Fast forward to 2025 and the Chinese denunciations of Lai have only grown stronger. It's no longer enough for China to brand Lai a troublemaker. Now he's less than human in China's eyes. A destroyer of cross-straits peace, who's pushing Taiwan toward the perilous brink of war, according to China in mid-March. 2 weeks after airing those comments, China held yet another massive military exercise near Taiwan, this time accompanied by crazy cartoon propaganda. Lai was depicted as a parasite in a video China released. The brief animation delivered a startling message: parasite poisoning Taiwan Island, parasite hollowing island out, parasite courting ultimate destruction. Though this sort of message seems petty, it's another signal that Xi is afraid of what Lai represents to the Taiwanese people. China is desperately trying to paint Taiwan's president as a parasite who's only going to lead Taiwan to its doom, precisely because Lai echoes the sentiments of many on the island who want complete independence from China. And China has a point. Lai is taking a much more defiant position against China than his predecessor, says Foreign Affairs. This stance is echoed in Lai's 17 strategies, designed to defend the island against Chinese aggression. We'll get to those strategies soon. For now, what's happening between China and Lai carries echoes of the past. Around 2 decades ago, Chen Shui-bian led Taiwan. China was quick to label Chen as a die-hard separatist and a troublemaker, just as it's doing today with Lai. That time around, China dealt with the Taiwanese problem by funding political parties to oppose Chen, though it did come close to military action in 2008. The only thing that held it back was a failed referendum on Taiwan joining the United Nations held by Chen, which indicated to Xi the possibility to take more diplomatic measures for China to claim Taiwan. Now, China and Taiwan are in a very similar position to the one in which they found themselves during that period. The island has a new troublemaker in China's eyes. It has a disruptor, somebody who can only be cowed through military might. But therein lies the twist. The China of 2025 is far more powerful than the China of 2008, especially on the military front. While China may have begrudgingly entered a direct fight with Taiwan under Chen, it's fully prepared for a devastating war against Lai. To compound China's escalating interests, we also have divisions within US President Donald Trump's administration, Foreign Affairs points out. It's not wrong. In March, RAND published an article under the headline, "From Strategic Ambiguity to Strategic Anxiety, Taiwan's Trump Challenge." The article noted that the political and military pressure China is placing on Taiwan has been growing since Trump took office, with Taiwan now facing increasing uncertainty about its relationship with what has been its primary security partner for decades. Trump's comments about Taiwan didn't help. Back in 2024, Trump was claiming that Taiwan should be paying the US for its security guarantees, remarking that the US was no different to an insurance company and that Taiwan doesn't give us anything. More recently, May 13th saw the US State Department walk back on a remark made by Trump. They've agreed to open China, fully open China, and I think it's going to be fantastic for China. I think it's going to be fantastic for us, Trump exclaimed while speaking about recent US trade talks with China. Then came the kicker. I think it's going to be great for unification and peace. Unification was the problem word in this statement. For decades, that word has been used by China to express its desires for Taiwan. The State Department quickly clarified that Trump was using the word in the context of reunifying the US and China, but that didn't stop alarm bells from ringing in Taiwan. Foreign Affairs says that China may now doubt the US commitment to Taiwan, with that doubt creating possible openings. Taiwan is trying to dissuade Chinese thinking from heading in that direction. In a May 1st interview, Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council Minister Chu Cheng was quick to note that he still believes Taiwan has the support of the US. Taiwan and the US have a very strong and solid relationship, Chu said, and Taiwan has cross-party support from the US Congress. However, Chu also noted that it was too early to tell what impact the Trump administration would have on that relationship, and that he was monitoring a constantly evolving situation. In other words, Taiwan is outwardly confident of US support, but it's still steeling itself for a potential future where that support is diminished, a future that could create openings for Xi Jinping to strike. What we have here is the slow emergence of two major issues that could lead to China seriously considering war against Taiwan. Lai is being characterized as a parasite and a troublemaker in much the same way as China did for a predecessor against whom it came dangerously close to launching a military campaign in 2008. Only now that characterization is coming at a time when China's military is much stronger than it's ever been, and Taiwan's relationship with the US may be on shaky ground. Then there's a key Chinese concern that's also resulting in greater escalation: the prospect of systematic decoupling. Foreign Affairs says that China is anxious about Lai attempting to systematically decouple Taiwan from China, with Chinese news outlets constantly accusing Lai of attempting to militarize Taiwan. A recent example comes from Taiwan's May push for a second supposed non-red supply chain for Taiwan's semiconductor sector. The idea behind this new supply chain is simple. Taiwan is responsible for around 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, along with most of its less advanced semiconductors. Lai understands that this is Taiwan's most important product. China is now accusing him of pushing for a supply chain that cuts China out entirely, with Lai kowtowing to the US to guarantee Trump's support. However, that's only one example. Far more worrying for China is something that we mentioned earlier, Lai's 17 strategies. Announced on March 14th, these strategies have been designed to counter growing Chinese infiltration efforts in Taiwan, according to the Taipei Times. Lai made clear the purpose of his new strategies when announcing them. For decades, China has never given up its ambition to annex Taiwan and destroy the Republic of China, Lai said. Not only does it continue to intimidate Taiwan through antagonistic rhetoric and military exercises, but it has intensified infiltration and united front work. We have no choice but to tackle this issue with a more aggressive approach, Lai concluded. That approach covers several strategies that will make it much harder for China to influence Taiwanese politics in the same way that it has in the past. Lai intends to reinstate military courts, allowing for much faster convictions of those he believes to be Chinese spies. Taiwan is also considering conducting surveys to determine how many of its citizens have Chinese passports or ID cards, especially among military personnel, government workers, and teachers. Any Chinese people who enter Taiwan may also be told that they need to renounce their nationality by surrendering these documents and cancelling their household registrations. Plus, as we seem to be seeing with the non-red supply chain issue, Taiwan is also looking to work more closely with its democratic partners to minimize Chinese influence on its people and its trade prospects. China hasn't responded well to these 17 strategies. Soon after they were announced, a Chinese government spokesperson denounced them as measures designed for obstructing exchanges and cooperation across the Taiwan Strait. Chinese propaganda is already ramping up. It's claiming that Lai's efforts to decouple from China are doomed to fail, and mocked Taiwan when the US threatened to impose high tariffs on the island in April, even as the same threat extended even more vigorously to China. However, the thing that worries China most is that Lai's strategies run counter to the One China policy. This policy can be traced back to 1949 as the Chinese Civil War came to an end. The defeated nationalists escaped to Taiwan, making it the seat of their government away from the Chinese mainland. The victorious Communist Party began its rule of China, which continues to this day, and Taiwan has since been cast as the trouble child, attempting to rebel against its parent. Formally, the One China policy refers to the stance of countries like the United States, which acknowledge, without endorsing, China's position that there is only one Chinese government that should govern both the mainland and Taiwan. Under this policy, the US has official and formal ties with China rather than Taiwan, though the BBC notes that this isn't an endorsement from the US of China's position. The US has instead created an extremely strong, though unofficial in diplomatic terms, relationship with Taiwan. Still, the policy is designed to hurt Taiwan. Any country that wants to build diplomatic relationships with China must first break its official ties with Taiwan, thus isolating the nation from the rest of the world. China sees Lai's 17 strategies as a way to break Taiwan away from China completely, allowing it to potentially overcome this isolation. That's systematic decoupling in a nutshell, and it's another contributing factor toward China getting more serious than ever with its war plans against Taiwan. By now you may have some questions. You can see that diplomatic tension is ramping up thanks to China's more aggressive rhetoric, Taiwan's uncertain position with the US, and Lai's adoption of decoupling strategies. But where's the evidence that China is preparing for a war? Is there anything we can point toward that says China is growing more aggressive against Taiwan in anything but rhetoric? There is. The military exercises. China conducting military exercises near, in, and around the Taiwan Strait is nothing new. It's done it for decades. However, there's no denying that the sheer scale and intensity of these exercises have ramped up ever since Lai became Taiwan's president. We got our first taste of China's escalated approach to its exercises between May 23 and 24, 2024. Mere days after Lai's inauguration, China's Eastern Theater Command of the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, carried out a series of military drills codenamed Joint Sword 2024A. Exercises included every major aspect of the PLA, including its Navy, Air Force, Army, and Rocket Force, with most of the drills occurring in the Taiwan Strait. They consisted of drills related to sea assaults, land strikes, air defense, and anti-submarine operations in the airspace and waters to the north and south of Taiwan Island in a bid to test the multi-domain coordination and joint strike capabilities of the Theater Command's troops, according to Global Taiwan. China wasn't shy about sharing why these exercises were taking place. Captain Li Xi, who is the spokesperson for the PLA's Eastern Theater Command, said that the drill was a strong punishment for the separatist acts of Taiwan independence forces and a stern warning against the interference and provocation by external forces. In other words, China was very unhappy about Lai's inauguration, and it was sending a warning shot. If Lai keeps pushing for decoupling from China and an independent Taiwan, he would face military consequences. These Inauguration Day marking drills were a signal of Chinese intent. More recent drills have also seen China involve its Coast Guard in military exercises, along with China operating across a larger geographic range than ever before. Beijing has only ramped up the pressure during the year that Lai has spent in office. That's according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, which published an examination into the number of military activities China has conducted around Taiwan between 2021 and early 2025. The numbers make for harrowing reading. For instance, China flew 3,075 flights into Taiwan's self-declared airspace in 2024. That was a record-breaking number and 81% higher than the number of flights flown the year prior. This uptick coincided with Lai's inauguration as Taiwan's president in 2024, CSIS says. It also made mention of the Joint Sword 2024A drills we mentioned earlier, along with follow-up Joint Sword drills China later conducted. However, it's the graph CSIS shares that's most revealing. With this graphic, we can see that China's incursions into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ, have risen consistently since 2021, peaking since Lai took office. In 2021, monthly ADIZ incursions hovered around the 50 to 70 mark, very occasionally breaching 100 per month. A peak toward the end of 2022 saw incursions rise to 400, but they quickly came back down to between 100 and 200 per month from late 2022 up until Lai's inauguration. Since then, China has been relentless. China broke the 400 incursions per month barrier again, mere months after Lai became president, and spent the rest of 2024 sending between 300 and 350 of its aircraft into Taiwan's airspace each month. The sheer volume of flights decreased slightly during the early stages of 2025, though they were still higher than at any point beyond the one-off peak in 2022. Again, we start to see parallels between the Lai and Chen presidencies in this increasing pace and scale of Chinese military activities, says Foreign Affairs. Earlier we mentioned that Chen held a referendum over Taiwan joining the United Nations, which was paired with the 2008 presidential election to boost turnout. The proposal very nearly crossed a red line for China, says Foreign Affairs, leading to it massively ramping up military activity as it approached direct action. The situation got so bad that many at the time believed China would soon attack Taiwan with missiles. That didn't happen. Taiwan was saved from its fate by low voter turnout and Chen's presidential election loss. But now Taiwan has a president whom China views similarly to Chen. That view is being reflected in China's heightened military activity and its propaganda, Only now, as we touched on earlier, China's military might is much stronger than it's ever been. As Foreign Affairs points out, China's rocket forces now field a much more powerful array of rockets than they did in 2008, including more long-range missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, and even hypersonic weapons. The previous 5 years alone have also seen China double its nuclear arsenal, to the point where it now has around 600 warheads, and may break the 1,000 mark by 2030. So you can add a nuclear threat to the Taiwan mix, along with a much larger and stronger PLA. Organizational reforms within the PLA implemented by Xi have also improved the Chinese military's ability to conduct high-tech joint operations while weeding out the corruption that held it back in the past. Add all of this to China's rhetoric about its more recent military exercises being designed to punish Lai, and you can't avoid the echoes of the past. What we're seeing now is 2008 all over again, only with a much stronger China that believes it's capable of taking Taiwan and may be able to do so without worrying about US intervention. China is crossing more red lines against Taiwan than ever before. President Lai is responding by leaning more heavily into his separatist policies. The powder keg that has always existed has only grown larger, with the fuse getting shorter. That brings us to the most important question: what, if anything, should the US do about all of this? To Foreign Affairs, the answer is obvious. Course correction is needed. It says that the US is still a wild card in the Taiwan situation. The US has been issuing warnings about these drills, the starkest of which came from US military Indo-Pacific Command head Samuel Paparo, who warned in February that China's aggressive maneuvers around Taiwan right now are not exercises, they are rehearsals. Yet the seeming division within the Trump administration on how to handle Taiwan gives China some hope that it can launch an invasion without retribution. In the same month that Paparo made his remarks, Al Jazeera reported on small changes made to the US Department of State's fact sheet for Taiwan. These changes again sent mixed messages. The phrase, "we do not support Taiwan independence," was deleted, suggesting that the US may support the idea. However, a passage covering Taiwan's inclusion into international organizations was accompanied by a new phrase, where statehood is not a requirement. The State Department also added that the resolution of Taiwan's dispute with China should be free from coercion in a manner acceptable to the people on both sides of the strait. Though seemingly minor, the changes further muddy the waters when it comes to the US approach to Taiwan. That, combined with China's clear attempts to showcase force against a Taiwanese president that it sees as a troublemaker, signals that the US should be paying closer attention. China's actions against Taiwan are intensifying. Its rhetoric against Lai indicates a lack of patience with Taiwan's leader. According to Foreign Affairs, this more hardline Chinese stance should make it even more important for the Trump administration to ensure that China clearly understands the resolve of the United States and its willingness to counter Chinese aggression. What will happen? The US doesn't want to leave the door open for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, but the reality is that door is at least ajar right now. If it's left that way, we may see China's words and exercises evolve into a full-blown invasion within the next couple of years. But what do you think about the elevated Chinese threat toward Taiwan? Are the two heading toward war? Is there anything that can be done to stop it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more up-to-date videos on the latest developments in the situation between China and Taiwan.